Hello. Hey, everybody. How we doing? I don't want to move this mic too much. Well, thanks for coming on out to our gathering here. How great is our faculty here? Pretty amazing, yeah. So we like to feature, let you know how great these guys are outside of the classroom. And today we have another one of our phenomenal instructors who's, his knowledge and his passion is unsurpassed. I've learned so much from him, and you are about to today, and he's got phenomenal musicians with him. So give a great hand to Mr. Kevin Stevens.
That's what you get for using 50-year-old drum set, right? Things falling over on you. Wow, there I am. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. Really appreciate it. So let's get to it. I figured I would talk today about things that I wish that I knew when I was younger, or that I wish somebody had told me, and that I'm still finding out now. A lot of these things are things that I have not mastered myself. These are things that I'm working on, life lessons, practice routines, apps, all these different things that I'm using to try to get better and to try to just working on this thing that I'm doing the rest of my life, this thing of drums that I love, and I think you guys do too. So I think we're going to have some fun. I got some musicians here with me, as you can see, that are going to join us in a minute. And I know that probably most everyone here knows me because either you go to school here or you're a friend of mine or whatnot. But unless you're kind of one of my old friends, you probably don't know much about kind of the history, where I'm coming from or whatnot. And you're going to see a side of what I do here. But, you know, I just thought I'd give you some background. And if you have questions or whatever. So I got this groovy little my iPad here. And hopefully we're going to have no technical issues today. Can we switch over, Raf, to the iPad screen? And I'm going to give you guys a little Kevin Stevens story here really quick. Oh, I see. Do we have to redo the talk amongst yourselves while I'm figuring this out? Sorry. Are we groovy now? All right, here we go. All right. So, I was born in Fargo, North Dakota. That's the only thing I could find for Fargo. And I moved to Denver when I was a little kid. So this picture kind of sums up me as a little kid. Denver Broncos hat and a Kiss Gene Simmons birthday cookie and Kiss shirt. Kiss is really probably the reason I play music today. I mean, I was so into that. They were like superheroes for kids my age, right? I did school band. I did private lessons starting at like 8 years old. I did after-school programs. That's me on the left right there, playing at the shopping mall, right? Did lessons all through middle school. Huge Van Halen fan. So that was a big part of my upbringing, was Van Halen. I got so crazy about that band. Then, as I entered high school, super into, right, Led Zeppelin, John Bonham, Neil Peart with Rush. Went through the whole like prog phase, everything like that. There I am there, I think 15 years old or so. I did drum and bugle corps, the Casper Troopers. I played tenors in 1986. There's me in the corner of that pearl ad. And then I'm the guy with the fluffy hair, second from the left, up there in 1990. So it's giving you a little bit of a clue on how old I am. In the middle of high school, I discovered, I was all into Rush. I thought that was the most crazy progressive music in the world. And then I heard this record, Birds of Fire, that my friend John Christensen discovered with Billy Cobham. And it was like my whole world got blown open with that, hearing that there was music beyond rock and prog rock and everything like that. My drum teacher turned me on to Tony Williams, kind of more like the fusion side of Tony Williams at that same time. And at that same time, I discovered Modern Drummer magazine. And it's a little bit hard for you guys now to understand what it was like for us old timers back then. But it was like, Modern Drummer was kind of like the internet for us as far as drums. It was our way to like discover other drummers, to hear new things, to see products. Everything that we go to online now, we had to basically just do through this magazine. So when I started reading this in like my sophomore or junior year of high school, I got turned on to all kinds of different drummers. Terry Bozzio, Omar Hakim, right? Dave Weckl, right? That kind of blew my mind, right? So everyone went through their Dave Weckl thing, and of course I had a good mullet just like Dave Weckl, and I had my cymbals set up really nice. Like if I saw a guy set up like that now, I'd be like, what the hell are you doing, right? Good stuff. So there I went to the University of Miami for college, and there, you know, it's like here. You get turned on to all kinds of stuff. I got turned on to like Jack DeJohnette, more avant-garde kind of guys like Joey Barron, Treelot Gertu, the whole world music thing. That rainbow in the middle, that's for Real World Records, Peter Gabriel's label. So I discovered music from Africa, was taking classes with Brazilian percussionists and Haitian percussionists, ECM record label from Europe, and then right there, Fred, you might recognize one of those guys. That's the M-Bass Collective. That's another band from New York, a group of musicians that was like really prog, kind of like odd time, kind of complex jazz. So that was me playing jazz there. Pink drum set, notice that, right? Got to feel pretty good about your manlyhood if you're going to play a pink drum set. And then also when I was there at school, I got into a band where we were like this funk, soul kind of R&B band. And that was when I discovered like Frankie Beverly and Mays. I got deep into Parliament and really discovered, so at school we were doing the jazz thing and doing all that crazy stuff, but here I really started to learn how to like really lay down a groove and be responsible in those kind of different ways. Some good hair going on right here, the ponytail. And then I discovered music from New Orleans, okay? So I can still remember the first time I ever heard a drummer play like a second line beat, and I just thought it was the coolest groove. And then I remember another time someone playing some meters, and it was like lightning struck me. It was like anything I thought was funky before that was just not as funky. So brass bands, Mardi Gras Indians, the meters, that's Zigaboo, all really hit me hard and still do to this day. After college, I moved to San Francisco. San Francisco, that was right during the time of the big retro swing movement in the 90s. You guys are probably too young to remember this, but it was a thing. So again, I had to learn, I had all these jazz skills, but I had to learn this whole different set of jazz skills, which was more of like a groove kind of jazz thing, and had to play behind a singer, and people had to dance to me playing jazz. So that was a whole different learning experience there. I also started a brass band in San Francisco, doing that New Orleans stuff that I love. And I lead this band to this day, 20 years later. And so this band, it's called Brass Monkey. It's, you see, I don't play drum set in it. We've put out albums. We've played the Hollywood Bowl. It's been an amazing thing. So I moved to Los Angeles 15 years ago because I wanted to do stuff more like this. I wanted to freelance in San Francisco. I kind of got more into the band leading thing, and I saw there was a little bit of a glass ceiling of things I could do, and my friends who went to college with me and came down here, they were already doing some of these things I wanted to do, more like touring and freelancing. So I came down here, and once I moved here, this is where I really then had to learn about all this kind of gap of classic rock and singer-songwriter stuff. I don't know if I can go backwards. Oh, I can. So it wasn't until I was down here that I had to really dive deep into the Beatles and bands like Wilco and Sonic Youth, the Stones, like get really deep into kind of like the classic rock, singer-songwriters, things like that. There was kind of a gap in my knowledge because I'd spent all this time at college studying jazz and everything like that. So then I started doing work that I wanted to do, this freelance type of work. And I play a lot of different styles of music. And what's interesting is I think most of the people that hire me for different things, they don't know that I do these other things. Like I do rock sessions for a few different producers or artists, and they've never heard me play jazz. They don't know that I'm into New Orleans stuff. They know nothing about it. They don't really care. Or vice versa. I do jazz gigs with guys that don't know that I do anything else. And I don't keep it a secret from anybody, but I do a lot of different kinds of things. And I just put up a few pictures of different just drum sets that you might see me playing around town. Like this is like 1920s, like this kind of setup, right? That last picture was concert toms. Another pink drum set I have, right? 2 pink drum sets, more like a Bonham kind of thing. This is a tour I did, rototoms and SPD, sampler, trigger pad, and samples on the kick and snare and things like that. Let's see. Another weird kit with bongos. Okay, so this is something I do more recently. It's more of a modern kit, right, with stuff, and I'm running tracks, I'm running videos. So I have my whole mixer and this whole suitcase thing that sits back there. Another old session. Even a little bit of this. Jason, you recognize this? So that kit there, I can't go backwards. Okay, was a total like metal thing. So I've started a few other bands down here. One's called the Deep Cuts with a bunch of teachers from MI, and another one is called Rumproller, and that's these guys. These handsome guys are actually here right now. I think they're going to come up and play. You want to hear these guys? Yeah? All right. Got Carey Frank on the Hammond organ, James Achor on the guitar, Mr. Woody Mankowski on the vocals. We call ourselves Rumproller. We're going to do a few different things for you guys here. And then we're going to come back a little later after we talk about drums and stuff for a little while. But enjoy. Everybody.
Love and happiness, something that can make you do right, make you do wrong. Love. Someone's on the phone, 3 o'clock in the morning, well, talking about that she can make it right. Yeah, happiness is when you really feel good about somebody. Ain't nothing wrong with being in love with someone. No, love and happiness. Talking about love and happiness. Talking about love, love, and happiness. You be good to me, and I'll be good to you, and we'll be together, yeah. See each other, walk away with victory. Ooh, hold on, love and happiness. Talking about love and happiness. Love and happiness. Well, love and happiness. Is walking together, talking together, lay it together, ooh, stay it together, power of love, love, love.
Woody Mankowski, everybody. Yeah. James Achor, Carey Frank. Woo. They're going to be back in a few minutes. Any questions about anything so far? Oh, what kind of hi-hats? Okay. Sabian Paragon prototypes. So, thank you. And right now there's a Keplinger jingle thing on it to give it more of a 70s kind of sound. Anything else? Yeah. Okay. Be sensitive, right? Listen to them. Try to stay out of their way. You know what I mean? Pick and choose where you're doing your fills. A lot of times, we might not be aware of what's going on vocally, and they might have a pickup going into a measure or into a new phrase, and we naturally kind of like think of a new phrase, and we're like, oh man, I'm going to fill into this thing. And we could be totally conflicting with them. So just being really aware of what the singer is doing melodically, and where the spaces are that you could get in and out. Knowing the words to a tune. This is stuff that I got to work on. There's a lot of stuff I'm talking about today that I need to work on still. Being more aware of like what the vocals are saying. I think if you hear about a lot of these great drummers and studio drummers, they talk about getting the lyrics and really getting into that and finding out what the tune's about, so they can emotionally engage and maybe add some more to the song as well. So that's not something I can say that I've done a lot of. Does that help, Melvin? All right. Yeah. Okay, yeah, good. So, I mean, the time for me, I did not grow up having good, steady time. I'm totally willing to admit that. And that's something I've had to really work on, and I still work on to this day. It's one of the main things I try to work on in my practice time. And I think what I found for myself and for my students is that, at least for myself, having good time is awareness of time. Are you aware of time? I think when I was younger and when I see a lot of students that this time's not together, it's just you're not aware of it. You're not really paying attention. You're thinking about where you're hitting, you're thinking about how fast you're playing, you're thinking about all these other things, but you're not thinking about steady time. So you got to train yourself to become aware of time, right? And the more aware you are of it, the more sensitive you become to it. And, it's kind of like building that inner clock. And then you become very sensitive to changes in the time, like if it fluctuates. So I can, I'll show you some things that I've found that I've worked on. Is that cool? Okay. So, metronome app, right? We all got to have one. This one that I have been using mostly lately is this thing called Polynome. And you've probably heard some of us teachers talk about it and stuff like that. It was made by a drummer, this guy Joe Crabtree, great drummer from England. And it's kind of the dream metronome for any drummer because it can do everything. Everything. It's kind of insane. It's deep. So a lot of people get kind of intimidated by this app because it is so deep. It's like, holy cow, I don't know, man, there's a lot going on here. But it's really powerful. And it's not cheap either as far as apps go. It's like $9 for the basic, like $20 for the pro. But I reached out to Joe, we're buddies, and he gave me 50 promo codes for the free version. So you get a $9 app for free today. They're like a little piece of paper back there with like these little strips. So make sure you guys get one of those little strips. You're welcome. Thank you, Joe. And you can check out this app. So anyway, enough about that. But what you got to do is you got to work on declaring the time here, right? And so in Benny Greb's DVD, he talked about like saying the time like out loud, like chit, chit, chit. And I found that when I say something out loud, it's super powerful. I don't know how that really works in our body, but our body tends to follow our voice. So if I'm saying something out loud, I'm already becoming more conscious of it. I mean, it's one thing for me to like think about like a click, like to just kind of think about that in my head. But if I'm saying chit, 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 and I'm consciously saying that, then already I'm becoming more aware of the time. Get that, Jig? Come on. Chit, 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 chit. So that was really helpful for me to start to just declare it, and for my students too, because that's the first step in becoming aware of it. Okay. So the next thing, after you start getting a hang of that, a problem that I had, and I've heard other drummers talk about this too. I think I was at a Ray Luzier clinic, and he talked about this, that today we practice so much with metronomes or drum machines and backing tracks and everything like that, that you kind of get used to just always playing with something that's kind of keeping you in line, right? And then when you get into a situation where there is no click, like what we were doing just now, there's nothing there. So a lot of times you kind of feel like you don't trust your own time, right? You become so dependent on that. So what you need to do is just need to start practicing with a click that actually disappears as well. That's there, but it goes silent, right? So there's a few different ways you can do this with different apps, but of course Joe has like totally worked it into this app where it's part of the app. But and what I found is kind of an analogy is that, like I see this with students all the time, they'll have a tendency to rush, but you know how like if you go bowling and you're a little kid, they put those rails up on the side so your ball actually can't go out of the lane, right? It just keeps it in, so it always goes down. And that's kind of like what a click on all the time on is. Like you might have a tendency to push it, but you keep hearing that click, so it kind of keeps pulling you back like a dog, like with a collar or a leash. You know what I mean? But as soon as that thing were to be gone, it's like you'd start sailing forward. So you got to work on trusting your own time, okay? So you want to have the kind of, this isn't turning sideways. Whoop. Here we go. You want to have something happen where it actually goes silent. Okay, and he's even got like a built-in setting here, this gap click, right? So, I don't know if, should I do this in front of you guys? Actually test my time here? All right. So, what this does is that too loud? I need that definitely up here though. So what we want to do, Jake, is we want to have the click come and go, right? And so he's actually got a way that you can start with this is we go to default mode. I'm just going to put on like a regular click, okay? At like 110, okay? Now check this out. I can go into here and I say random mute. And I'm going to say root mute certain notes. And I'm going to set a percentage. So 29% of the time, it's going to start muting these notes, right? So now if I'm playing chit, 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 right? And as you get stronger with this, you make that percentage higher and higher, okay? So it's like taking off those training wheels, and you're really having to start to own it. Now, so eventually you work your way up to where you can do something like this, where we get to some longer phrases. So what he's built is this thing where it's 3 bars of time, 1 bar silence, 2 bars of time, 2 bars of silence, 1 bar of time, 3 bars of silence, 1 click, 4 bars of silence. okay? And so, I mean, this is where you really start to have to own it, right? So as you do this, right, you got to start and just do something nice and simple like this where you can just get comfortable, right? And the thing is, the trick to this, there we go. The trick to this is that, I got to watch out, I'm talking. Woo. The trick to this is that you got to be confident with it, right? You got to be confident. I was a little bit ahead. So what you can't do is when it goes silent, you can't be wondering, like, where's the time? Where's the time? You know? And so my students, a lot of times when you start doing this, you start to be like, it goes silent and you're like, oh man, I hope I'm with it. I hope I'm with it. And that totally, you're destined to fail that way. You got to be. Then that thing goes silent, and you're like, yeah, the time's right here, and it's going to come back in right now, right there. Like, you have that kind of attitude, and it totally, you get different results. It's like no joke, okay? So as you get more comfortable with this, then, you know, you can start to, like, add some fills and do some different stuff, and eventually even start to, like, improvise, man. If you can, like, improvise over this kind of thing, you know, then, like, you're on to something. Oh! All right. I think I'll quit while I'm ahead. It's like I'm walking a fucking tightrope up here. God damn. As I was doing that, I was like, this might have not been a great idea. I don't know. Okay, so that's us working on our time. You see what I mean? And it's like, man, and it's something like, it's an awareness that kicks in. And so when I'm playing with these guys, I'm really trying to, again, just be aware and declare where the time is and really feel that. And I notice when I become unaware and unconscious of it, that's usually when things start to kind of move around, when I kind of space out or whatever. You know, that's when things slide. Okay? So that's time on like a more of a, on a, you know, not rushing, dragging kind of thing. But then there's working with like a metronome like this on the more like small kind of level. Okay, so I know that Fred has his timekeeping class, and he talks about a lot of these same concepts, I think, right, Fred? But another thing that's really been powerful that I've been working on the last few years is putting the click in different spots, not on the downbeat. Because again, when it's just always on the downbeat, it's like things can get kind of raggedy in between the downbeats. Like your downbeats might be cool, but like your E and Us might be a little funky, or in the case of mine were, okay? So when you put the click on, say, like the E and the you have a very narrow window that you have to thread now, right? and it just takes it up a notch. It's like you're really forcing yourself to really be clear. So what I'll do is I've created this loop. Those are E's and U's, and that kick drum's just on the 4. Okay, I know right now you probably can't tell where it is, but so, I mean, it really forces you to be accurate with those in-between notes. Now, you have to start slow to train yourself to even hear this, okay? But, again, polynome, this guy's kind of thought of everything here. If I go back to just that default metronome, check this out. He's got all these faders. So here's a click, but check this out. Oh, I don't want the muting anymore. But we've got these faders, so I can bring up the E, and I can bring up the right? So I'm hearing the E and the and I'm also hearing those downbeats, right? So I can kind of train myself with this. Right? So I got the downbeat too. And then as you get more comfortable with that, fade out that downbeat, right? You can actually bring that thing down, right? So it's kind of there now, right? And then you got to work your way up. So like, I can only hear the E's and U's up to a certain place. It might be like around, let's see, it might be around like 100 or so. Let's see. Got off there, right? So you're just really raising the bar. So that's another thing that's really helped me as far as timing, has been doing this kind of different kind of click work. And if I'm doing stuff in jazz, like doing something with jazz, I'll put that on the and of 2 and the and of 4. And man, that's been a real wake-up call for me. Like, just showing where I was kind of pushing triplets and doing some weird things I just never realized. So, you know, getting this kind of gets us into practice, and right, and what is practice and what is good practice. You guys want to talk about that at all? Yeah. Any other questions first? Forrest. Oh, I see what you mean. No, I think bigger. I think I get kind of bogged down if I'm thinking about smaller subdivisions. I've been working with this lately, trying to kind of feel more in my body. Like, imagine going back to this, I'm trying to imagine more like how someone would look if they're dancing, you know? I'm trying to imagine somebody dancing. Right? And so even if I can take this with thinking about a fill too. So even if I'm improvising, you know what I mean? So I've been trying to think more big picture, somebody dancing, somebody's body moving, even as I'm doing much more busy kind of stuff underneath. If I can imagine this big picture, I seem to be having some better results. Is that cool? Yeah. Oliver? Okay. That's another thing I'm trying to get better at myself, is dynamics and control of dynamics. Because a lot of times I find out, especially with this jazz stuff, is I'll practice something, I don't know, more like mezzo forte or probably forte even. And then I get on a jazz gig and it's always like, you got to play real quiet. And all of a sudden I'm trying to like solo and do some stuff at this super low volume that I've not practiced at. And shit just falls apart, right? You know, it's like, so I need to spend some more time. And I read this article about Brian Blade, who's a drummer that I really love. And he talked about that his teacher had him play everything he had him play in a lesson. He had to play at like fortissimo, mezzo forte, and at piano or pianissimo, really quiet. And I think that's a great thing. And I've been just starting to instigate that with some of my students and demand that of myself. So, you know, just practicing at a lower volume. I mean, practice whatever you're practicing, all that stuff I'm giving you to work on in the lessons, work on it at a super low volume and control it. And, you know, that's probably the best thing I could recommend, you know. So practice. Yeah. Do you have a question? No? Okay. What is practice? Right. It's necessary. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. To me, practice is working on something that we cannot do. That is practice to me. Playing is something different. Playing is like expressing ourselves on the instrument, having fun, just performing. That's playing. And so I think I walk by a lot of practice rooms, and if you walk by my practice room, you'll probably hear it some too. There's a lot of playing going on when we should be practicing. And again, I'm not immune to this myself. I'm preaching to the choir. You know, I'll catch myself sometimes being like, wow, what are we doing here? You know? But be clear about, if you want to get some different results with your practice, you gotta work on what you cannot do. And in order to work on what you can't do, you gotta be honest with yourself. And a lot of people, I don't feel like, are very honest. You know, they're kind of afraid to really look at their weaknesses and to kind of face themselves and to face their stuff, you know. And I think I was like that too, a lot, like with my time and clarity of my ideas. And, you know, and that's tough when you really face your issues. Your ego hurts, right? We want to sound good, right? We want to sound really great. So it doesn't sound sexy usually when you go around someone's practice room and they're working on something they can't do. But I remember another article. I'm all into reading articles with dudes. Chris Dave, man, bad dude, right? He said if you go by his practice room, he sounds like he does not know how to play drums. He says, I sound like I'm a beginner all the time because I'm always working on stuff I cannot do, you know? So how do we know what we can't do? Well, listen to your instructors if you're a student here. But one of the biggest things you can do is record yourself, right? Everyone's heard this before, you know, and probably not everybody does it. And I'm getting better with this myself. And again, it's tough to record yourself because usually there's a gap between what you think you sound like and then what you actually sound like. And when you first record yourself and you hear that back, you're like, oh man, that's not fun. Maybe I won't record myself again, right? But as you record yourself, when you record yourself, it doesn't lie, right? That's what it really sounds like. And that's what happens too. If you're not used to recording yourself and then you go into the studio and you hear yourself what you really sound like, it can be kind of shocking too. So it's great to kind of prep yourself for that as well. But what happens over time is that as you keep recording yourself, you're probably becoming much more aware of your issues and that you're hopefully working on those issues. But then also, the gap between what you think you sound like and what you really sound like starts to become closer because your expectations probably come down some and your performance is getting better. So then, you got to just get over that initial kind of shock of it, you know. Other practice things, have a plan. Have a plan before you go into practice. You know what I mean? Like, write down a few things that you want to do in that practice session. You know, I want to work on this. I want to fix that. I want to learn this groove. I got to do this for that class. Have a plan before you go in. You know, have a practice journal. That's been great. That's something I've seen a few students of mine, and this one student in particular, he always had this thing, man. He would write down cool ideas and all this stuff, and he'd always pull it out in the lesson. I was like, man, that's a great idea. So I started doing that, and it's been really handy. Like, I'll transcribe a little idea in there. I document all the stuff I'm working on and the tempos and whatever, just so I can kind of track, well, where was I with that? But also, it helps me, and I do like a big asterisk by the stuff that sucks. So I remember, when I go in last week, I was like, God, man, when I was doing the E-us, that was weak, like I gotta address that again, So again, it's hard to improve something if you're not tracking it, right? Like, how does a swimmer or a racer or anything, how do they improve their times if they're not timing themselves, right? So, tracking yourselves, whether with a metronome and actually writing some things down, can help you actually track your progress and track your growth, okay? Another practice tip, divide your practice time up into segments, into like blocks, okay? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, somewhere around there. Because you'll be amazed at how much more productive you are when you only have 10 minutes to work on something, like an exercise or a class or a song or something. Man, you're gonna buckle down for those 10 minutes and you're gonna get some stuff done. Whereas I got an hour to get some shit done, and for the first 20 minutes, you're kind of fiddling with stuff, and then you're kind of like jamming out, and you're kind of loosening up, and then you kind of get into some mode, and you're like, oh, cool. And then it's like 40 minutes into the hour, and you haven't really, done anything, right? But man, this 10-minute thing, I go on these 10-minute segments. It's pretty amazing, and it's a good way to track how focused you are, because if 10 minutes goes by and it feels like, holy cow, that felt like nothing, you're pretty focused. Whereas if you're like, whew, this is taking forever, and you look over and we're like, oh man, we're only 5 minutes in, it's a pretty good sign that you're kind of spacing out and you're thinking about other stuff and you're not really focused. So just try that. I've again, with private students, I've talked about that, and it just helps you really be productive, okay? And as you get older, again, you've heard all of us say this, but man, time, man, you don't have any more extra time as you get older. You know what I mean? You guys are in an awesome situation here at school. I know some of you guys have to work and you have other responsibilities, families and stuff like that. I commend you for coming here and doing school as well. But, for you guys that are just here drumming with nothing else to do, man, take advantage of this time. because when you get out of here and you do have to get a job, and you do have to start getting gigs, you're getting a day job, whatever's happening, you're going to have less and less time to practice. So what that forces you to do, and then you add kids to the mix. I have a wife, I have 2 kids. You add that to the mix, man, you talk about your time has just disappeared. Whew, you know, it's amazing. I know, Dave, you can relate to this. Once you have kids, you're like, what the hell was I doing before? Like, you know, wasting all that time. So I have to be really efficient with my time. So, you know, I try to still get into my studio and practice an hour a day, minimum. Like, that's what I try to just commit to, is an hour a day. Usually I go longer, but, you know, I just want to get in and do that. And I can get a lot done in an hour if I'm focused, you know. Any other questions? Yeah.
Like, big picture thing, like I remember a few years ago you decided you were going to kind of take control of Kevin Stevens Incorporated. Can you kind of talk about how you kind of created this world of these other gigs, and then briefly kind of go through just those gigs as well as all the other gigs you might have going in, like, say, within a month, because I can never keep track of how many different things you're doing. I think it's good for everybody here to hear that, you know, you do kind of sometimes have to grab the bull by the horns and make your own work, which you've kind of done really successfully, which I've been impressed with. And then also just how many different gigs you are doing at one time in a month. They understand how many different gigs you have. Say anything about that, just briefly touch on that.
Okay, all right. So Jason's asking about different projects that I lead versus things where I freelance. And there it is. I have a balance of these two things. And so I've started, I don't know, I guess 3, 4 bands over the year where I'm whatever, kind of the leader, founder. And originally that brass band, and then the deep cuts, and this group, Rumproller. And all of these started from a place of, I just wanted a chance to play this music. You know what I mean? Like, there's this music that I love, and I think it would be cool to not only listen to it, but I want to experience being inside of it. You know what I mean? So that's why I started each of these projects, because I was wanting to experience that. And my ambitions were not really too much beyond that. I mean, initially, it was always just, I just wanted to play this music. So, you know, when I talk to students about, you want to, even while you're here at school, try to find some other people to play with, to start to make some music with, to, you know, make music with outside of classes. And the key that I found, because I've been pretty successful with these groups, they've all lasted, you know, one 20 years, these other 2 5 years or 6 years, you know, with all incredible musicians who are all very busy. But the key to, I think, the success of these groups staying together is that you got to find people that also love that same thing that you want to do. Like, I had that idea of the New Orleans brass band. So I was asking around, hey man, you dig any New Orleans brass band stuff? Yeah, I do. Okay. Hey, I'm thinking about doing, would you want to get together and just try it? Yeah, let's do it. You know, that's how it started. You got to find people that share that passion. Like, if you have, like, doing this organ trio stuff, you got to find guys that, like, love that kind of music, you know. Otherwise, you're going to feel like you're always kind of pulling and no, everyone's kind of dragging their feet, you know what I mean? So that's been key to having this stuff actually be around for this long. And now, as far as then, each of these groups kind of got feet of their own. You know, they just then started getting some work and started turning into things. So, you know, there's been an up and down of how busy I've been with these different things. Brass Monkey, for a few years, even though I was living down here, was maybe a third of my income, you know, for a few years. And we do private events, and we do weddings and all that stuff. Like, I don't really go up there for, like, club gigs anymore. But I run the band. The band's in San Francisco, but I manage the band and run the band from here. So, you know, I do all the contracts, I do all the bookings, I do all that stuff flows through me. So, you know, that happens a few times a month. These bands were really busy. Rumproller had a every week gig for a while. So, I mean, and this, to Jason, ask your question, I mean, it all varies. I mean, sometimes I'll have, you know, between, I don't know, 3 to 3 to 7 or 8 gigs of my own in a month, right, for the different bands that I lead and whatnot. And then another, equal amount freelancing. So I am constantly juggling, having to be a band leader, which means you're like organizing rehearsals, you're sending people checks, you're dealing with contracts, dealing with those kinds of things. And then the gigs where I freelance and people hire me, whether that be for a recording session or a jazz gig or a singer-songwriter thing or a TV show or even to tour. I play with this David Bowie tribute group that kind of travels around the world. So then those gigs happen too. So, and it's nice. I like the variety. I think it helps keep me kind of sane that I have this balance of the groups that I love and this music that I really love that I don't really get a chance to play outside of my own groups. And these other groups that hire me, and I love that music as well, but I like those gigs as well because I don't have any responsibility. Like for this stuff, a lot of the responsibility's on me. I mean, these guys are great. These guys all take care of all kinds of stuff too. I mean, Carey deals with that organ every time we play. I mean, that's a lot to deal with just in that. But, it's nice when I am freelance and someone hires me and I'm a hired gun, then all I have to do is I show up and I'm prepared. You know what I mean? If I learn my parts and I'm on time and I have a good attitude, I mean, that's kind of my job. And I like that too. And that, it's a balance that I do back and forth of juggling these things. And then teaching here 2 days a week. So between teaching here 2 days a week, I have a few students at my studio. I have the different bands that I lead, and then I do all the freelancing things. That's what makes up kind of my music career. Does that help, Jace? All right. Any other questions? Guy or Albe? No. No. It's hard. It's harder to hear. It's harder to hear that, and especially on the stage right now. Maybe when we play again, Raf, you can bring up the organ. I can't barely hear it right now. But even everywhere we play, the organ bass is a lot harder to hear than an electric bass. It's not quite as defined. It's it's coming through the same speaker that all the other sounds coming through, so it's kind of masked. So. And so I guess no, I haven't changed my technique at all, but I have to kind of listen differently. I have to really kind of try to pick it out more. I've been messing with my bass drum technique, just trying to get it better though, and as you can see, I probably usually play off the head. Sometimes I play into the head if I'm playing like a really loud rock thing, but usually I'm playing off the head, and especially on a drum like this, right? Like this drum, it's got no hole in it, right? So it's just two heads. So, in class you hear us talk a lot about burying the bass drum beater or not, but then on those bass drums there's all this stuff in it, and you can't hear the difference anyway. But like on a drum like this, right, you can really hear the difference. And I'm kind of amazed that it even sounds as good as it does even as I'm pushing the beater into it. And actually still up here kind of sounds cool. A lot of times it sounds really bad. So, yeah. Continuing to study, continuing to learn. That's something I want to stress. Man, when I left Miami and I moved to San Francisco, I had intentions to take some lessons with this one guy, but he like wasn't available. And then I just never took any more lessons for like ever. And Tony Williams was in San Francisco alive at the time teaching, David Garibaldi. I mean, there was tons of great drummers, and I just didn't. I don't know. I was busy with life, and I feel like my progress when I left school really kind of plateaued for quite a while. And if even probably got worse, for a while, because I wasn't playing as much. I was working as a waiter, trying to like just support myself. So man, after you guys get out of here, I know you guys are gonna have plenty of stuff to work on, but man, keep taking lessons. Keep in touch with whether it be teachers here or seeking out other people. I've been trying to get back into that in the last few years since I've been down here, and it's been great. It's been great. I took a few lessons with Dave Elitch this year, one for my hands and one for my feet. And Dave and I are friends, and we've hung out and played a lot, but never done like a real official lesson. And it was great. It was really helpful. So, I'm trying to incorporate some of those things he was talking about, just as far as technique, So one of the things, speaking of my own learning and stuff like that, anyone ever checked out this guy, the 80/20 drummer online? He's a guy in New York. He's also named Nate Wood, but he's not the not Nate Wood, Nate Smith. But it's not the Nate Smith black guy. This is a white guy named Nate Smith. And he's a great like jazz drummer. I think he went to like Manhattan School of Music and stuff, kind of quirky guy. And he's got these online lessons, and they're called the 80/20 drummer. And it's based off this principle that like, you can get 80% improvement out of, wait, let me see if I do this right. Basically, you can get like a gain of like 80% by just addressing a very small like 20%. Like there's like, I don't know if I'm saying this right. Anyway, I'm gonna let you guys look that up, the 80/20 principle. Anyway, this guy, he had this great thing. I checked out like his little online videos. And the basic premise is you can get great benefits from fixing some very small things, but that are key things to fix, and you can get some big rewards. So a thing that he mentioned was he thought that most drummers, you can trace 90% of their issues in their playing to three things. Playing clean, meaning your limbs landing together, right? Not, right? We hear the difference. Playing in time, which, that's kind of obvious. And then kind of having hesitation or like a hiccup in your playing when you're trying to like execute an idea. That basically like 90% of our problems can be traced to those three issues. So if you're having, and I've, since I got hip to this, I think about it a lot, and I think about it when I'm working with students too, and it's mostly always true. I mean, you can usually, when someone's struggling with something, you can trace it to one of those things. It's not in time, like you're kind of hesitating, or there's some kind of like not clean kind of thing going on. And when I started checking this out, he had like this little lesson thing where like you could kind of test yourself. And man, the playing clean thing, that was a rude awakening for me. And like I've been talking to students about playing clean for years, but I hadn't been looking or listening that closely to my own playing. And so I'm working on this stuff, and I'm recording like in Pro Tools, and then I can like look at things, on the grid and stuff. And I was just like, whoa, what's going on? Like that's not really landing together. And then I'd be like, okay, well, maybe that was weird. And then I'd start to really be conscious of it, and then I realized, whoa, this is not like just fixing itself now, And I had to really work on it, and I just was unconscious about some subtle things not landing together. Even like with jazz, of like feathering the bass drum and doing 2 and 4 on the hi-hat. When I really started to check it out, I noticed there was like a little bit of like phasing happening there. So that's something I've been working on the last few years, and I think it's been huge for me. Because, I mean, think about it. If there's, and what I would notice is, like say, like my hand and my bass drum are landing a little bit out of phase. And I think I was realizing that was causing, like maybe if I was hitting a crash early or something like that, just a little tiny bit early, it was actually having to do sometimes with like this physical thing of my body did not want to land together. It did not want to go. So one thing was jumping ahead of the other. So a thing that I did to work on this, this was an exercise I just kind of made up myself. I'm sure someone else has done it too. But what I would do is, so that's the E's and the U's again. And I would do paradiddles like this. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Let me do that so it's a little tighter. So I'm trying to work on my goes, right? And then I'd read bass drum patterns, like out of like a New Breed. Woo! There we go. That one. The E's and U's, that was tough for me. It used to be like, all right, let's see if I can do it. I can't fix it. So, man, but that really helped me to like tighten things up and just, again, an awareness. I was not aware that like when I was doing ghosts in my bass drum, they just were a little bit out of phase. It wasn't crazy. It wasn't like, but it was a little bit out of phase. And when you have like little cricks in your playing like that, it might not be too bad at a slower tempo, but when you take things up to speed, it's like having some like sand in the gears or something. And then that's when things really start to kind of like expose themselves. Like when you start to play some faster shit, if there's some issues, it all starts to fall apart at like a faster speed. Okay? So gotta hear it. That's another thing. Like, I can practice that exercise in like 5 different ways. I can practice it burying my beater. I can practice it heel down. I can practice it, you know, with rim shots, really low volume. Right? I mean, need to work on that. So, any of these things, I got plenty of stuff to work on. I'm always amazed when someone's like, man, I don't know what to practice. Like, really? Man, listen to yourself for like 1 minute. You know, I'll tell you 10 things to practice. That's how I feel. I mean, if I ever don't know what to do, record yourself for like a minute and, you know, I'll find a few things. I'm like, okay, that. When you practice, hit those things up front, right? Like that's like eating your vegetables first. Don't save the tough parts for later. Do that block of time, those 10 minutes up front. The shit that's the hardest for you, that's the roughest, man, do that first. And then at the end of your practice time, have a 10-minute slot that's the playing, the having fun, the jamming out, chopping out, you know, playing with recordings, you know, whatever. I mean, don't lose that joy and that spark that you have for music and why you chose this. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like, you know, it's all just, you know, banging your head against the wall working on the stuff that's the toughest for you. That's a lot of it, but man, reward yourself with that fun playing time at the end of your practice time. Any other questions? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think going out. I mean, I think that was the best advice I had when I moved down here. Someone told me, go out every night to where there's music being played. Go to clubs every night. And I did that. And it was very fruitful. I mean, I still should do that. I would be probably much better off if I were to be doing that now. You know, I don't go out as much as I should be. But when I can almost trace, you know, every gig I've done, including like my brass band playing at the Hollywood Bowl, to me going out one night and meeting somebody, you know, which then led to another thing. You know, could be a different gig, could be all kinds of different opportunities. You know, it might not be a direct relation. It might be 3 or 4 times removed. But, I mean, that's how you're going to meet people, you know, and not just drummers. I mean, go to places. You got to find out the kind of scenes that you want to be in, like singer-songwriters. You know, that's more like seems to be hotel cafe and things like that. You know, jazz would be different places. You know what I mean? So you got to figure out what scene you kind of want to get into, and then start going and hanging out there. You know, make your face seen, introduce yourselves to these people, and don't just do it once. I mean, that's the thing. You know, I'm speaking to the choir again. I mean, this is not a great skill of mine to like go out and be like a hang dude and go shake hands and all that stuff. It's not my normal thing. I have to kind of force myself to get out of my comfort zone to do that. But when I've done it, it's been fruitful. Definitely. You know, and again, I mean, approaching studios and whatnot, I mean, that's not something I've done. But man, more power to you if you want to get on the phone and cold call some people. I mean, what's the worst they can say is no, right? Not interested. I mean, you're a hustler, Oliver. You're going to be all right. Good. Yeah. No other questions? Yeah.
How do you work on musicality when you practice in your lab? Because when I practice, I spend so much time practicing just to a metronome and practicing to music.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So really, how do you practice playing to music?
Okay.
One song played 10 times, or do you take 10 songs every day?
No. No, I mean, I think lately, more and more, I've been focusing on smaller and smaller things, you know, narrower and narrower. Like the last few years, I've mainly been working on just trying to play clean. I mean, that's really been like 80% of my practice. I'm just working on my limbs landing together, you know? So as far as a song, no, I wouldn't. For me, I go deep into like one song, you know what I mean, for like a day or a few days, and really get inside of it. Really, you know, check out what's happening with the production, with the drums, with the drum sounds. You know, like what's going on sound-wise. How's he hitting the drums? You know, like I was hitting those drums very different for the 2 songs that we played. Right, it was a very different approach for each tune. And that comes through listening, you know, and trying things and trying, how do I get that hi-hat sound? How do I get that different sound? So I would suggest playing with recordings every day. Playing with recordings is really huge, but I would focus on, you know, like 1 tune a day, something like that. Another thing you can do is, this actually kind of leads to another app that I was going to talk about that some of you guys have seen me use in classes, and that's Figure, right? And so this is something I would suggest working with. This is a free app made by Propellerhead, the guys that make Reason. And what this does, it's like a, right? So it's like a drum machine. So you got like drums here, you got bass, right? And I got like a lead sound. So I got like 3 different instruments that I can program. And it's super fast and easy, okay? So I have this programmed in here, right? So I can, so I might have worked on my playing clean paradiddle exercise, you know, with the click and everything to just make sure that I'm really hearing everything clearly. But yeah, then to take it to the next level and to try to get a little bit more musical with it and to be a little more groovy with it, I put it into a setting like this, right? And now I can work on the same principles, but I've got some other instruments to feed off of and some more inspiration happening, right? Like this, I mean, you could then work on like soloing stuff and solo around that bass line. You know what I mean? Like those are like hits. You can start to work on it in different ways. So that would be one thing. The other thing that I say to work on musicality is that Benny Greb exercise, the 1-bar repeat. You guys know about that? Where you play an idea, so measure long, no matter whatever it is, for one measure. And then you have to repeat that idea for the second measure. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Repeat. New idea. Repeat. New idea. Repeat. You know, that makes you very conscious of what you're doing. And this is another one that, man, when I first tried this, I failed miserably. I was like embarrassed that I'd been playing drums for so long and I could not remember. That's the thing you'll figure out. If you're not really aware of what you're doing and you're just kind of like playing stuff, like it's just like you're talking and you're not aware of what you're saying. So this forces you to be really aware of what you're playing and to really listen to yourself, right? So this has been a huge thing for me to like be more aware of what I'm playing. And when you become more aware of what you're playing, you start to be more aware of dynamics. You start to be more aware of your touch, you know, because you're trying to replicate those things now, you know. Does that help, Oliver? I mean, those are two of the biggest things I can recommend. So really quick, we're going to bring the other guys back up in a minute. But another thing that I get questions about is playing in the cracks, okay? You know what I'm talking about? Playing between straight and swung, okay? Like, right, straight, swung, and then there's like stuff in between. So how do we work on that? And there's a lot of music there. I mean, here at school, we kind of talk about the two because first you got to just feel those two. But there's this whole in-between area, okay? And there's a lot of music there. And a lot of New Orleans music is there, a lot of reggae, a lot of music from Latin America is in these cracks, okay? And that's where I love that feeling. It feels like this greasy, kind of swampy, kind of push and pull. So I think I learned how to do it by just playing to records. And, you know, I mean, you got to listen to some music doing this. And there's a whole, like, playlist that I have on Spotify just called In the Cracks. And it's a bunch of tunes that I've compiled that do this. But, so you got to start with doing some listening. I don't think I have time for that. But check this out. On Figure, this is really cool. So here's this shuffle dial. Do you see this dial right here? Okay, so shuffle, this is based off of like the old Lindrum and the MPC samplers, okay? And basically, to help you get a visual of this, if we go back to here, nope, I don't want that. Hey, there's my family. Here. This, when we talk about shuffle or swing, we're talking about every other note, the even notes, okay? If it's at 50%, it's halfway between the odd notes, right? Beats 2 and 4. If it's totally even 16ths, it's at 50%. If we start sliding that second and fourth note this way, that percentage starts to get higher, Okay, so that's what this little button is talking about right here. Okay, so here, straight 16ths, right? Right, really straight. If I go to right around 67, right? That's like triplets. Back to about 58, 59, right around in there. We're like kind of halfway between triplets and straight now, right? So this is a way that you can kind of train yourself to feel this, okay? I didn't have anything like that. I didn't learn this way, but it's a cool way that you can use this app. Right? Train yourself, though, to be able to control those doubles in that area. So what happens is usually we've trained our muscles to just do the triplets. So we're really good there. And same with our foot. But you have got to train yourself to be able to do an in-between. So you want to start by just doing unison. With your foot, too. The foot's the crazy one, because if I start to do... I did those 3 bass drum notes in a row. They're all different... Yeah, they're different placements. Ba-ba-ba. The third one's a little further away than the first 2, okay? So that's the trick for working with that stuff. One other little quick lesson I just want to bring up really quick has to do with playing in odd time. And this is a thing that I discovered. Is Ryan still here? Did he split? He did. Okay. So he's like the odd time master. So I was going to see if he could verify this for me. But you guys all know about that table of time where it goes from quarter notes up to 30-second notes, right? And you got to play through all the different subdivisions. You know what I'm talking about? Talking about this. Right? But I don't want that middle click. Right? So we're at 50 BPM. Right? So this is like a table of time up to 30-second notes, right? Quarter notes. Quarter note triplet, right? 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 eighth notes, 1, and so we want to work on this just so we can hear all these subdivisions. These are like speeds, right? Or gears in a car, like gears in an engine, right? And we got to be able to hear these different subdivisions, right? University, university, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 and 2. That's 6, right? Listen to the radio, listen to the radio. That's 7. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E. And then you got to be able to go back the other way. Right? Back and forth. So the first step is to just be able to hear those. So I did that, was working with my students. I think I saw Jason Harnell doing doubles like this. So like, right? And so when you get to the 5s and the 7s, university, it's like I'm feeling 5 now in 2 ways. I'm feeling it 5 over 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm also feeling it in my arms like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 over 2. Right? Okay, so I was then working with my students and working with myself to be able to feel that. And this one day in this lesson, the student's like, well, could you do that on the drum set too? And I was like, yeah, I guess so. I think, you know. And we've been working on these hand-foot patterns, like doing like, you know, doing different like 2, 3, 4 note combos around the drum set. So I was like, well, you know, I think we could probably do your hand-foot combos, right? And so I'm doing this like just in real time with a student, right? Triplets. And I'm just improvising, right? 16ths. Now, so when I start doing this with a student, I'm starting to kind of freak out a little bit because I've never played like this in 5 before. I've never like phrased like this. Six I've done, I guess. 7. So as I'm doing that, thanks. That's what I was thinking to myself as I was doing it. With this student, I was like, holy shit, I'm playing some shit right now. Like I was freaking myself out because I'd never played like that. And I realized from me coming from it in this place of doing these singles and those doubles really helped, that I could now feel 7 just as I'm just feeling it as like a big bar. And the 7 inside of it, 7, 8 or whatever, is just a subdivision, just like 16ths or 30 seconds. I'm not thinking 7 now, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. I'm not locked to this like this 2s and 3s thing, which is the way that I think most of us are kind of taught. So it was really freeing. I was like, I unlocked some kind of thing, at least in my own mind, that really kind of freed me up. So now I have, you know, I don't really have opportunities to play in 7. I don't really play any bands that do that. But now, I mean, I'm feeling 7 just as like, put it in the cracks. You know, so that was a little bit messy, but you get the idea. Wanted to share that with you because it's something I kind of stumbled upon. And I haven't really heard anyone else talk about it, and that's why I was curious to get Ryan's take on it, but I'll talk to him later about it. Enough of that. Let's bring up the guys, right? Play a little bit more. Any other quick questions while they're coming up? Again, Carey Frank, James Achor, Woody Mankowski. We're playing downtown tonight. Speaking of gigs around town, we're playing at 7 Grand downtown tonight. My drum set? Yeah, sure. How old do you think it is? Yeah, it's about 50 years old. I think it's from the 60s. It's an old Gretsch. We call it a round badge by the badge that's on it. I don't know the exact year. 2012, 14. It's kind of the classic jazz kit that like all of our heroes played. You know, Max, Elvin, Blakey. All those guys played a kit like this. I got it a few years ago on Craigslist. Chris Hewer, he's like the drum master, recut all the edges, and yeah, it's pretty cool drum kit. I've got a bunch of different kits, but this one for this kind of music is the one that just feels really right to me. Afterward, we've got some stuff to give away in case anyone, we're kind of running low on time, but I'll get rid of that stuff when we're all done. I want to thank Remo, Vic Firth, and Sabian, all companies that I work with, for helping put this on today, and for Stewart Jean for allowing me to come up here and talk to you guys for a while. So thanks. This is my first clinic. I've never done anything like this. And appreciate all you guys coming out and hanging out. How about a hand for these guys, right? What do you guys want to hear? You guys want to hear something slow, real slow, or something kind of funky? Okay, ain't that peculiar? Time-wise, Stewart? Are there any questions for the band? Well, we've got these guys. What they want for drummers, or? All right.
How do you guys go about songwriting together? And with you and coming up with ideas?
Well, this band, yeah, this band is pretty much all like covers that we do, and a lot of this, like what it started with, was just right off the record. You know what I mean? And so that's like what that thing was. But we do other things where we'll take like a pop tune like "Shake It Off" or, you know, modern tunes and do an arrangement of it. And that's, you know, come in with an idea. Some of the stuff's made. We just make it up on the spot. Sometimes it originates with one of us, and we kind of bring it in and flesh it out with the band.
Well, also, it changes over time too.
There's definitely evolution.
Yeah, that tune, the melody started like. Yeah, it's different. It's different now than it was when we started.
Yeah.
For sure, the melody has changed completely.
Also, it's just survival. Some nights we're in a bar and we're dying, and somebody's like, "Let's try this," and we try it, and people get excited by it, and then it becomes part of the repertoire.
Yeah.
This band is like, lack of pun, very organic. It's not. It's song driven, but it's also very jamming. At its best, it's kind of like an open conversation. These things are just themes we start on. We're playing real abbreviated versions. What we do, we would probably take much. Oh, I'm not on a mic. We would probably, in a bar, we'd be drunk, and we'd play that song for like a lot longer. I would just play way too much E-blues, and these guys would be like, "I've already heard all those licks 10 times," and you just repeated them again. So this is different. This is real open, and I think we just try to, these bands, organ bands, were sort of jukeboxes. They started out as jukeboxes, and I think at our best we try to honor that tradition of just trying to figure out what the room wants. We want to be a band that pleases what needs to be played right now. So it can be anything from jazz standards to literally a current pop tune that we BS our way through, just to see if it'll make people get up and dance, because it feels like that's where this moment is going, whether it's a wedding or a bar gig or whatever, someplace somebody hires us. We're just surviving. This is a survival band. That's the way I think of it. It's fun. I mean, that's really fun. You know, the good news is the guy who's playing all the harmony is also playing the bass. So even if we go up, it's not a mistake. We all just have to recover. We have to be listening constantly and try to respond. This is really a conversation. It's not heavy compositional music, unless, I don't really feel we take that time with things. It's all evolution. And the funny thing about this band is lots of people sub in and out of it. A lot of people in this room have played in this band. So it's also funny because we had an experience recently, like going back to songwriting, stuff that we play with Carey has evolved so much that there might have been a chart in the beginning, but we start into it trying to learn it with a guy who's never done the gig, like especially in his chair, an organ player. And Kevin's like, "Let's play that." And I'm like, "I don't know if that's a good idea, man." We have all these twists and turns that we've kind of come up with over time playing together. But the other side of it, sometimes we call those tunes, and with another player in one of these chairs, it becomes a whole nother beast. Maybe it's more laid back, it's more forward. This is an exciting band that way. Like, we're real lucky to get to do this together in a pretty constant basis and have a nice group of revolving musicians. But this is about having fun. And like I said, the best nights, the crowd joins us too. We have a lot of fun. Carey, you need to say anything?
He's like,
Any other questions?
Thank you very
for the band members? Yeah.
Going back to the practicing thing, but in thinking about the concept of only working on things that you can't do, how do you go back into the practice room and work on stuff? What do you call working on the things that you can do, like rehearsal
That I can't.
do you ever go back and actually work on the things that you're already good at, just to like?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I'm always trying to. When I say I can't do it, it doesn't mean like I literally don't know how to play it. It means it's something that I want to get better. So it could be like at a speed, like I'm trying to push the tempo to a higher speed because I can't play it, or I'm trying to control it more, or I'm trying to be able to improvise over it more. You know what I mean? So it's like, I mean, a lot of this stuff I've been working on for 20 years, you know, but I'm still working on it because it's like, it can be better. So I'm trying to get it cleaner. I'm trying to get it more in control. I'm trying to get it more expressive. I'm trying to be able to do those things with it. So it's not always like I'm just dealing with something that's like the bane of my existence, you know what I mean? So, but I'm trying to challenge myself. So it becomes, through the practice, I mean, so that's kind of an in-between thing. It's like I'm pushing myself, but it's a little bit more expressive. It's a little bit more, I can be a little bit more creative with it while I'm challenging myself as well, Any questions for these guys about drummers? Like,
You guys play with anybody else? I mean, obviously you do, but like, what other kind of bands do you play in, and what kind of decisions do you make that before you even choose to play with those bands? What kind of mentality do you go through that makes you say, okay, I'm going to play with that guy?
I think by and large, I don't play as much as I used to, but I think a good plan is to just say yes to everything once. Why not? What are you gonna do? Sit at home, go practice? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, not that those are bad things, but like, why would you not play with somebody at least one time? And if it's cool, do it twice. I would say when I was really a busy musician, I was lucky to be in a touring band that worked a lot, but there's also so much to be said for like, sometimes it's like we go into this, for example, and like I said, sometimes it's a completely different band. You know what I'm saying? And we just get up when we play music, and all of that in my life where I don't have much time to practice. I have to be a parent. I have a business I run as a day job, and I'm a very part-time musician compared to these guys. But what is good is just being out there playing. So I don't think you should really overthink it. I think you should just do it. And the rest of it will work itself out. Maybe a band becomes more successful, and that becomes an obvious road, or there's guys you just enjoy from another reason. But don't analyze it. I think just go play. I think there's a real lack of going to play.
For me, it's more about if I get along with the drummer or not. It's because there's so many great musicians in LA. You don't have to work with a-holes if you don't want to. So I don't. You know what I mean? That's.
Yeah, he works more than any of us, I think, actually. So he probably should chime in.
The question was, how do you choose like who to hire or who you're playing with? Yeah, what he just said, the biggest thing was the hang. Like, it's assumed if you live in LA, you know how to play, but it's just who do I want to hang out with? Because you're doing more hanging out sometimes than playing at a lot of gigs, or some gigs, especially if they're travel related. And I play in a bunch of different genres, from punk rock to jazz and blues and not polka. But I used to play klezmer a lot, and so it's just, I mean, in the end, the same thing that goes throughout all the other than the same 12 notes is groove, and does he or she groove and, groove with you and listen? Because there's some drummers that maybe they're used to just being leaders. I mean, Kevin's leads a bunch of bands, but he also listens, and he knows when not to lead, even though it's still his band. Just being the nature of this instrument, I'm playing bass, chords, harmony, melody. So the nature of the instrument is a leader type instrument, but I'm still listening to everyone else as much as I hope they're listening to me. So, and you can hear it in every instrument, not just drums. Like, if there's certain rhythmic or harmonic stuff that I might do that I'm assuming if the other musician is listening, they will do that or react to it in some way. And I can hear it very quickly whether or not they're listening to me based on how they react to it. Mm-hmm. And that's usually a big sign on whether or not I'm going to want to work with them again.
Right. Let's do O'Donnell.
Okay. What should they be listening for on this one?
So we're gonna do a little Beatles tune, our take on "Oh Darlin'." Just space, right? This is gonna be a slow one. Don't let these slow tempos scare you, right? Fill in all that space with your own subdivision here, right? So.
Oh, darling, please believe me. I never do you
Woody Mankowski, everybody. All right, take it up, do one little quickie and get out of here, right? All about my girl. A 1, 2, 3, yeah. A little shuffle for you guys. Shuffle. Ending. An old classic. All right, Carey Frank on the Hammond organ, everybody. James Achor on the guitar. Woody Mankowski. I'm Kevin. We're Rumproller. Thanks for hanging out. Keep the cymbals splashy, everybody, right? Thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon. If you guys want some free stuff, come check it out up here. I'm going to give a little trivia. You got to earn it. My ear pack died before we even started. My ear pack died before we even started. Thanks, guys.